So welcome to Dose of Deborah, Rehab for the Heart. I'm your host, Dr. Deb Howell. Today, my guest is Zissis. And Zissis is a conscious teacher, a HeartMath trainer, a heart imagery meditation facilitator. And he is also has a group called Divine Masculine Roundtable.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah. So welcome, Z.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you again for the invite and the opportunity to see what again comes out, because it's been really magical for me. And talking to Ez, which he couldn't join today, but I'm hoping he can join us next time. He found it incredible, magical as well.
Yeah, and these conversations that allow us to reflect and hear each other, but hear ourselves, and what we want to do with that is to have others listen and gain perspective, because all of it really is about perspective. Our perspective and our beliefs are sort of all intertwined. And when we have a subject matter that opens to our very core, that most sensitive and vulnerable space within us, and the discussion that we started was around love, right? Like what does that look like? And how do we learning how to love ourselves? And as a man, how does that process begin when oftentimes men are, I guess, conditioned into not showing so much emotion, and especially for yourself, right? To tune in and to really be present with yourself. And it's that whole process usually comes about after something that has been painful, versus we're going along in life and everything is, but it's when we hit up against some pain and some real questions about life and what does it all mean, right? So today I wanted to ask you, because the subject was brought up about the battle within, right? And men or women, we all go through our own inner dialogue and questioning ourselves, our self-worth, all that. But when it comes to learning how to go in and, have that self-inquiry, and yet we're meeting with conflict. We're meeting with our own inner conflict, right? Regardless of what's going on the outside, the inside, the challenge to believe ourselves, right? So I wanted you to kind of, from a male perspective, speak to challenges with loving yourself, learning to love yourself.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. So
Yeah, that's a load.
I'll see what there's two parts that I was kind of holding on to. One, a virtue of your manhood or your womanhood is the virtue of of you being a child. Everything that we learn, and I think we've covered some of this in the first talk that we have, in my opinion, anyways, is the virtue of your growing up. The first 7 years, first 14 years are really the foundation of how you are taught to be resilient, to shape perspective, to overcome, to be positive, to be loving to oneself, right? I look at my own son, and I think men in different stages in their, and when I say that, it's like men, culture has shifted in the way that men have allowed to express themselves. I think there was a massive shift with, I believe it was John Irving with Iron Man, Iron John, started that whole process of for men to started unpacking and get the emotional context out and start healing those wounds. And prior to that, men men don't cry, they don't express emotion, you toughen up, and that led to a lot of suicides. It continues to lead to a lot of suicides, as far as I'm concerned, as far as men goes, because it's not really a validation of their core, and it doesn't have to be men; it's women in general. When you refrain from expressing your authenticity, the trueness of who you are, there is a conflict within oneself. So your adult life is an expression of your childhood, I would say. So learning to love oneself is really learning to heal the wounds in your childhood. And I don't care what anyone says. People can say, I've had incredible, beautiful childhood. There's something there for somebody, for everybody. It could be the most benign thing that you weren't aware of that kind of leads into something that you pull that string and everything else collapses. So I think for me, it's always been a journey of going back and meticulously going back um, and assessing what are those wounds that need to be healed. What is that shadow that I haven't uh, put light on, that needs to have light on? And that takes courage. This isn't something that, and I suspect that's why most don't actually take this journey, because of the courage it takes, because it does begin to begins to unpack the emotional content. If you experienced it one, whatever that emotional content is, reliving it again is always much more powerful, right? It's like you were there to begin with, and the refrain again from experiencing that. But every time you experience it, you minimize the emotional power that once had on you. At least that's been for me. And over time, where you can make amends and heal and allow that to be, and witness it for what it is, because in the end, that that incident had served you in a way that you yourself may not have been aware of at the time. And it's having that perspective. So the beginning of the self-love is really getting into a deeper dive of your truer expressions, is what I would say.
So I think some of the things that may get in the way, and you mentioned suicide, and that's very extreme. So expectations, shame, failure, a sense of failure, right? Disappointment. And, different examples come to me when, one was a physician's son who was a medical student, took his life. Now, I would question, why would he take his life? Because was that path of medicine his path,
Right.
or a path that was chosen for him? And in order to speak to what he wanted, he didn't have that option to do so without the possibility of disappointing or feeling okay, you're going to let someone down, or there might be pressures, right? There
Yeah.
are pressures that come from parents to children, in the way that a child making a decision on their career is not based on what they want, but based on what is expected of them. And then when you can't speak to it, you're sort of like you're swallowed up, and you don't feel that there's a way out. And So that's a burden that is carried. And for men in roles as a provider, right? Right. Typically that expectation of protector provider, right, puts them in a place that they have to be strong, right?
Yeah.
Physically strong, like mentally strong, like they could just handle it. But yet they have within themselves, like, I want to be seen, I want to be heard. And that's just not happening. So, and that is an issue. That is a real issue. And I know of more than one situation where this led to not necessarily suicide, but depression, uh, parents disowning their child because the child did not choose the path that they wanted for them. So then if, right, here's the other flip side. So the child made a decision as an adult to take a different path. And then the parents are like, well, so they keep distance as a means to, um, it's a, I don't know if it's a conscious form of punishment, but it's punishment. And so where does love fit into that when we are wanting something from our children that is not in their heart to do? And as a male who is not expected to cry, is not expected to really show this level of vulnerability and sensitivity because it's deemed as weak, right? And it's
Well,
not
I'm
weak.
I'm gonna level with you. The people that know me, I cry a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm perfectly
Yeah.
perfectly okay with showing my expression because it is a reflection of who I am, and the fact that I'm allowing these emotions to come out in someone's presence, a stranger or otherwise, I think has a deep reverence for me, anyways, of the space that's being held at that point in time. Because I think the moment that, yeah, have you ever been in a room where, I've been in many rooms actually where somebody shared a story with me, or us as an audience. And that story was incredibly vulnerable, right? They didn't have to share that story. The moment that they shared that story, I had so much passion, so much love, so much, it brought out that part of me, right? And that's what we need to start doing more, is trusting our fellow human beings and allowing that vulnerability. Maybe our past has shown us that if you do that, maybe experiences, I don't know, but if you do that, this is what the punishment is for. And maybe this is why people don't do that. But I think there's so many rewards connecting, because when you do that, I think you connect at the deepest part of one's heart. You really have a true heart connection at that point in time.
Ultimately, wanting to get into our own, accepting who we are, and without judgment and without shaming ourselves or any blame to be in the picture, any of those things, or feeling guilty. So ultimately, that plays to validate what we feel and acknowledge the emotions that we feel, because this is where things get bottled up. This is where, if we don't feel appreciated, and and things can sort of escalate, right? And mainly it's because that becomes a means of expression, right? That is not controlled, that has taken on a instinctive quality, a reactive quality.
Mm.
And that does not truly reveal who we are. It just shows that we are human beings that have reactive tendencies. And when we're feeling under pressure, right? Pressure, and you're going to do what's familiar to you. And if there's no practice, if around you, if your environment does not accept like crying or accept conversation, right? Around emotions that have you saying, I'm sad, and I don't know, like really just dropping into and being okay with not knowing, right? Versus feeling like you always have to have the answers and you always have to be on. And so, but a lot of that is the internalization of what we do with that, right? Yeah, there are other people who can be on the outskirts to say things, but then when we internalize and make it the truth for ourselves, that's when it's alive in us, right? It's in us. And so, but for Mal, I was going to ask you, you said that, crying it just comes for you. Has it always been that way, or did you
Oh no,
kind
not at
of,
all.
yeah.
It's
So,
something.
so how about that? Like, how did that, where did you, because that's the whole point. Like when folks right now, if they are not, they're like, that's not me, right?
No. So maybe it's a virtue of me aging. I don't know, but when I was a young man, certainly those precepts were drilled into my head, especially coming from a European background. You just don't show that weakness, period. And it's only when I started doing my own self-discovery work and just sitting with who I am. Who am I? Well, what's my purpose here? Right? When I'm sitting with that and uncovering all the things that I have uncovered, the crying was the physical manifestation of the emotional release. So the moment I released that physically, that emotion was released with that as well. So for me, that's the relationship. That's the neuronal connection that I have with crying. And now and I allow it freely because that's the emotion that it means. That's charged for me. That's an emotional charge that sits within my cells and my fascia and my and my muscles and it sits there and it's reverberating and it has energy. And this is what, in my view, disease is. When a lot of these thoughts manifest into emotional dysfunction, allowed to be in the body over long periods of time, you get different manifestations of disease. At least that's what I think.
Yeah. The body contains information of our life experiences.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I would ask you though, was it something of an emotional experience that led you to your own reflection? Like, or did you decide this one day, okay, I'm going to sit and
No.
reflect? Because that's what I'm saying. Like, you know what I mean? Like something usually is a catalyst for the like, I need answers. I need help. I need, like, you're struggling. You're struggling, right? Like, because
Well,
it's usually not until we're really in that place that we can decide to kind of question our life, right? And what is our life all about? And who are we, to be in this world?
right. So if you're, I mean, I'm the type of person that I've always been a person of self-discovery and always looking for the higher purpose in life as long as I can remember. And I got to a certain point where I felt like any of the work that I've done, I could do, I've done it. And anything that was my impediment, I couldn't see it. I had the blinders on. I couldn't take that option. So that's where therapeutic work went in, had a third party through multiple conversations, kind of reflect on some of the things that I'm kind of missing. So it started there. That unpacking started there. And the healing started there as well. That was the beginning process for me.
So from a relationship, was there, because again, a lot of these things, it's not until there's some like direct thing that says, hey, wait a minute, like this is not, usually with respect to someone or something that makes us take a look, right? It's beyond a nudge. It could be like, okay, I got like something's going on. And so with relation to something, right? Because we're not typically seeking to make changes in our life if we don't have any issues with what's going on, right? So something has to be like, all right, I'm unhappy, or I feel unfulfilled or discontent, or something is stoking that
Right.
inquiry. So was that with respect to something that got your attention to
Um,
initially, especially since you said like this was not how you were raised to be. You weren't raised to show emotions, and just you came to understand that was a natural part of who you are. But there's a gap between then and there, right? So, right, people will fall in the gap. It's like, get them on the raft. Like, can we get on the raft? How did you get on that raft to sail across to where you're at to begin to show that? So what's the onboarding piece? Like, what would you suggest would be helpful for someone to sort of, if they're in a struggle right now? Because typically that's what's going to
well,
lead people to think. So
if you're in a struggle right now and you're listening to this, the best advice I can give anyone is to be in the company of other like-minded people like you. The worst thing that you can do is isolate yourself and completely disassociate from life in general, because that contorts the reality even further, especially with the landscape that you may be holding at that point in time. So, company of other individuals is the best thing. Laughter as well is incredible balm for whatever needs to be healed at that point in time. And for me, it's always getting to a point of stability that then you can begin to look at what needs to be looked at. Thoughts are really important. The way you think is really important. And considering we have anywhere between 70 to 80 thoughts a day, the nature of those thoughts is what creates your reality and creates the emotional content on a day-to-day basis. And I'm willing to venture that most people, and I catch myself, um, thoughts tend to be more negative, overwhelmingly more negative than positive or even neutral thoughts. There's an association there as well. So if you want to do something right now, or if you want to do less of something right now, is being more in neutral thought, or uh, I think positive thought is it's been overstated. I tend to go to more of neutral thought because it focuses on the present moment and what needs to be done, and acknowledges what has been done in the past that got you here to rectify what needs to be moved forward in the future. That's what I would recommend.
yeah, so asking for help, giving yourself permission to feel whatever you feel. I mean, it's so important that be a starting point, that we give ourselves permission to feel whatever it is you feel, because we're all with this inner child, every one of us.
Right.
And that's just what it is. Like, believe it or not, that's just what it is. We all have an inner child. And so acknowledging that there is that place in us that feels frightened, that feels uncertain, that feels alone, that, you know, and
It wants to be
is,
acknowledged.
huh?
It wants to be acknowledged.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for whatever it is that's showing up, and it's important to give yourself permission to feel, and then know that it's okay to ask for help, and look to ask for help from the people or that you trust. And if it's in a crisis situation, there are crisis hotlines that definitely are important to seek out,
Yeah.
because this is important. And if, like what you said, if you isolate yourself and all the chatter and things that go on in our own mind, that we can, you know, get all convoluted and just further spiral into a place that can be really unhealthy, and to the point where someone feels like the only way out is to, like, check out completely. And that is not what we're talking about to that degree, is because we can get to a place where we say, I need help. Be okay with saying, I need help. Right.
That takes
And
and that takes real strength to do that too.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's perfect,
Yeah,
perfectly fine to ask for help.
yeah. And so, speaking from a male perspective, I just it's important that men recognize that they have love that is within them to be honored and revered, like, um, and our own acknowledgement of that love that's in us,
I
right?
I I think from a male perspective, it is our duty to how can I put this? Not only share our love, but be the love in the world. And I think as women, it's not only accepting it, but to also radiate it as well. I think that's the combined role of the divine feminine and masculine.
So being around other men like you who are willing to hold space for other men to
Yeah.
show up and to be present to themselves, and have an environment and other men that will have them, just openly, non-judgmentally, just uh, be available to them. you know um, where can people connect with you? Because that's where you are. That's where your heart is to reach out to men.
Right. And right now, it's the YouTube channel that I'm holding all the Divine Masculine roundtables at. It's the Elevate Me Academy YouTube page. And through there, if you want to reach out, there's an email that you can email me with. That we are also in the process of holding and creating a digital and a physical circle of healing for men. We'll wait to see what COVID comes out. Hopefully, summertime. It won't be, maybe it will, maybe it won't. We'll wait to see. But we're creating the space nonetheless. Because I think, and I'm not trying to single out only men here. I just feel like what I'm built to do is for men, though it can be done for women as well. That's not the issue. I feel for me, and what I'm here to do is to create that space for men, because when men begin to heal, then women can begin to lead, and they can begin to lead to heal as well.
Yeah. Well, we're all in this world together, and I think that Men are just as sensitive, if not more, I think sometimes, right? Than women. It's just not given the permission to be outwardly displayed, right? I'm talking not in this kind of sensitivity, this raw, but like a sensitivity that's tender, right? That's what I'm talking about. A sensitivity that's genuinely tender. That
and honoring that space.
right,
I've
right.
heard a lot of conversations or stories where men tend to get to that point and women don't honor that, and vice versa, right? It's honoring the space that, that vulnerable space that we tend to get in when we are asking for help, but to truly honor that space. And I think that's part of the other issue is that we don't know how to hold space for people because we ourselves are not whole ourselves. And when someone starts to let go of some deep personal stuff, like, oh my God, what do I do with this? How do I be?
Yeah.
All I would say is that they just need you to listen without judgment, without coming back. They just want you to listen. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And feeling accepted and heard is
Heard.
yeah.
Yeah. I think all of us, Deborah, I think all of us need to be seen and heard in some way, shape, or form. That's the source of all conflict.
Yeah. And listening to ourselves in a much kinder way. Because we judgment, criticism, we can be really good at that. So we can learn some new ways to be with ourselves and be able to hold space and be with others. So,
And that's actually harder. It's much easier to be negative because of everything that we consume, right? I think our environment is what dictates how we begin to think of ourselves in relation to other things and how we bring that forward. So, simplify life is what I would say. Stop watching TV, stop reading things that feed the negativity, right? Um, be around positive people and positive things. Feed your soul in that way, and things naturally turn around.
yeah. And our nature is love, and yet our instinctive nature is to protect, and we're wired for, gauging our environment.
Yeah.
Right. And so the nervous system is already set up to look out for us in that way. So this is a conscious decision to go in and to, reflect, because the rest of it, we're on autopilot. We are. So,
Yeah.
but I appreciate this conversation, and we can continue this conversation. So, just it's important that folks know that there is room to explore, and there are people who are willing and available to take that time and hang out with you. So,
Absolutely.
you're one of those folks, see. And if anyone wants to connect with me, I'm on Facebook, Dr. Deb Howell, and I have a podcast, Dose of Deborah, Rehab for the Heart, and and Instagram too, Dose of Deborah. But I appreciate you, Z, and your openness and your sincerity. These conversations are important to have.
And we all need to start having more of these conversations.
Yeah.
In one way, shape, strangers among strangers. It's only we're one big human family, and it's time that we got to know each other a little more intimately, let's say.
Yeah, well, we are more alike than we want to acknowledge at times. So.
And the whole our whole history has been focused on all the dissimilarities than all the similarities.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think
Yep.
we're learning so much from that, and I really would like to see a future where we're celebrating our similarities and respecting things that we may not agree with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can agree to disagree and be civil and
But
um,
to know, have an open frame and have the curiosity of a
mhm,
child, like, why is it like this? I really,
mhm.
really understand why. And when I adapt that kind of frame, for me, I learn so much.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's so much to these conversations, and I have many stories. So
So next time when you connect, you'll have to tell us a story.
yeah. So yeah. Well, listen. Have a wonderful evening, and look forward to connecting again. And so I hope that folks who are listening will find value with this and reach out. Okay, we're here for you.
Thank you, Deborah. Enjoy your evening, and
Thank
looking
you,
forward
Z.
to the next connection.
Yeah, same here. Me too. Okay.